Hey everybody, we're excited to be back with you and broadcasting from the Core Collaborative page. And we'll be sharing this in Leading Impact Teams and with some of the rest of our network as well. Paul and I are super pumped to have Lori Cook with us.
I'm trying to point to Lori, but everything
it's
is
always
reversed,
backwards.
is reversed today. But here's Lori in the middle with really bad internet because you're in the middle of a power outage, right, Lori?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So sorry about that.
Yeah,
couldn't have picked a better day.
Yeah, it's all right. It's all right. You live in the where? Not Kansas, Oklahoma. Oklahoma.
No, Oklahoma.
So Isaac is coming from North Carolina, me from Brooklyn, Lori from Oklahoma.
Got a pretty good spread, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So we thought that today, because we've been doing like kind of a series on clarity, that it makes a lot of sense to have Lori share what we've been doing behind the scenes over the last couple of months with our Clarity for Virtual Teaching and Learning. And some really good news today. We had about 250 people from the Riverside County Office of Ed join us on a demo. It was really great feedback and also gave us some blind spots to consider, especially for special ed. And for those of you out there, Lori and Isaac are authors on our new framework for virtual teaching and learning. So Lori today is going to be sharing a little bit from that. So the first question for Lori before we go to examples is like, how do you get kids clear, and now probably kids and parents and caregivers, how do you get them clear when you're teaching and learning remotely? Like, what are some strategies that you have found that work the best to make sure that the expectations are clear for everyone? Ooh, we have Kristen chiming in.
Yeah, I just saw the, hi, Kristen. Concerning math, what I've found is that we're really fighting this whole battle of new math versus old math. And so when we started this journey, I was like, how are we going to get the message across to parents that math that their students are dealing with, it's not the enemy, it's not anything new, it's just really focusing in on the behaviors. And so how do we learn math, and why is that important? So I think just being upfront and honest with the parents and the students of what does it mean to do math, what does it mean, what does it look like, sound like when we're learning math. I kind of took that approach because I know that is what is not normal in houses. So like math in the good old days, like when we were growing up, it was you had to be right, you had to get the right answer, and you wanted to be the first person to get the right answer. And then and you had to do it exactly like your teacher did. You could not think outside of the box, and there could be nothing more false about math than that. Math is creative, and so we really want to open it up and let students learn how to explore it versus regurgitate it. So that's I kind of took the stance of let's make it really clear the behaviors, and then everything else will kind of weave in together. So that was on the menu from the get-go.
Yeah, so I'm kind of thinking we go straight to a menu, and I'll pull them up for you because we're not sure we have Miss Vega online and Kristen, a really good friend of ours. So it's really great to see. And just for everyone to know that we will always put these videos on our YouTube channel, and Isaac's really good at shooting them out on Twitter and Facebook and things like that. So without further ado, I'm going to go, where would we like the fourth grade first?
Sure. Let's start there.
Cool. So we're going to move to this fourth grade menu, and I'm going to move over to the side here so I can operate it. Can you see that? Can you see that pretty well?
Hello. Yeah, I can.
Yeah.
we tried to build in the whole student agency piece of voice and choice. And so that's where we went with the menus. And so the learning goal then is really broad, because this will give all stakeholders then the opportunity to move in and out of the tasks. So the goal's very clear, really from the get-go. We're focusing on the behaviors. And then what I love about it is that and what you'll notice when we look at 7th grade, it's going to look very similar, because the behaviors are the standards for mathematical practice, or the process standards if you're from a state that doesn't have those. And so they're all about the behaviors. So that's what we focused on. And so they look the exact same. So if I were a parent and I had a student in a district that was using these, then the behaviors would be the same, and we could actually peer assess each other. So I took the practice standards and kidicized them, if you want to say, or made them friendly so that parents could interpret them as well. And so the get-go is, remember, mistakes in math are okay, and they help us learn deeply. So I just kind of went through then what are some other things to consider. And I really wanted that to be front and center. And what my favorite thing about this whole process is, when I got some feedback from my family, I shared it with my husband and my children, and all of them said that top bullet, remember, mistakes in math are okay and help us learn deeply. They said, wow, that would have been so nice to know when I was in school, or if I had that. So that was like, yay, I'm hitting home with that. So anyway, those are all behaviors that then in all of the different tasks, we highlight different ones. So then after that, when Paul and I were chatting, I was thinking, okay, if I were to give a choice to students, what would I want them to practice? And so I just kind of said, well, the most important things in math is number sense and problem solving. So then, based on the unit that you're looking at, you can insert different tasks. And so I'm all about making it easy on the teachers. So I chose protocols and routines that could live through most units of study or focuses of their chapters, or whatever you want to call them, curriculum maps. Everybody has their own little verbiage. So I chose different types. So rename the number. It works kindergarten through 12th grade, because it's a protocol that you put in what you want it to do, and then they can manipulate based off of their knowledge and their skills. So we'll kind of look at that really quickly.
Yeah, and of
but
course,
what
I can't pull that up, of course, because now I'm in Google Classroom, not in my own Google address. So we're going to have to talk about that. Talk about rename the number. That's okay, unless you can pull it up, or I can find another way while you're talking.
I'll talk about it. So rename the number. It's not anything brand new by any means, but what I did was I actually merged it with a concept map. So instead of just giving them carte blanche to just rename the number in all different kinds of ways, I put it into a concept map where they have to fill in bubbles. We're using Pear Duck, which is a really cool new extension that I didn't know anything. Well, I take that back. I didn't know about it, but I had not played around with it. And so if you are not familiar with Pear Duck, I would highly encourage you to go over there and play with it, because it makes your slides interactive. You can have formative assessments right there on the spot, whether you're live with your students or if they are self-directed. So in that, though, the piece that I love about the format that we're using is the clarity lives in every task. So some of the non-negotiables that are in all of our tasks are clear directions. What is the purpose of this, and why are we doing what we're doing? So that's right there at the very first that all of them see. Woohoo, you found it. So that
Isaac
first slide then is, yay, way to go, Isaac. Saved the day.
So Isaac, why don't you share that so we can work through it together? Like, go ahead and put it in present mode. Because I think what's really important, which will be really hard to do in this session today, is to actually be able to show you our model. But really, you can see the website down below, clarityforlearning.com. Please just reach out to us, and we will set up demo sessions. So Isaac, what you have to do is hit present.
Yeah, I gotta unshare that one and reshare the new one real quick.
Okay. So we will tread water while Isaac figures that out. So,
stretch.
So Lori, so just really quickly, why don't you kind of go over I think what makes our remote teaching and learning model unique is the coherence. It doesn't matter what grade you teach, what course you're learning, there is coherence on the other side. Every task has the same essential elements. So you want to, maybe now that we have it up, maybe you could kind of just go through it bit by bit.
Yeah. Oh, so if I were a parent, the one thing I would love is that
that was a joke. I'm sorry. I couldn't resist. I couldn't resist.
Yeah, okay, I'm trying to focus here.
I couldn't resist.
So there are directions and a why piece to it, because really that's what I found is my son, he has to know, why am I doing this? If you don't tell me why, I'm not going to waste my time. Whereas my daughter, she's a people pleaser. She'll do it. Whatever you tell you, the teacher told me to do it, I'll do it. But so what we did was we pulled in, why is this important? So all of my overviews and or directions have this little phrase in there, empowered mathematicians. So that starts my why portion. So we're really in this task hitting on the flexibility of their thinking in quantities. And so we're going to work out our number sense muscles. So every single task, whether it's math, ELA, history, science, you name it, it will have some kind of overview or directions with the why. Then this is just the nuts and bolts of the directions, what they're going to do. It's very clearly laid out for them. And then my favorite part of this is the next slide, because we actually have clear success criteria. And then the following piece will be then it laying right next to an example. So all of our tasks have some type of example with success criteria, where before the students are even given the opportunity to try the task, we ask them to take the success criteria and find it in the example. So we're already getting them to quote unquote peer assess, because they're looking at a work and looking for the different pieces. So that is clarity with a capital C on it, because that is going to help the students, and that is going to help the parents and caregivers, so that they can always go back and say, okay, well, are you sure that you did blah, 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 blah. It also then gives some examples of what are some ways that we could look at this. So this actually is a 7th grade example. When I look at the content in there, this is not the 4th grade example, because it has the integer work and it has absolute value and some complex equation, or not complex, but some equations and things like that. But it kind of gets the students to start thinking about what are some ways that I can attack this if they're not familiar with the format. But like I mentioned, this works in 4th grade, it can work in 1st grade, and it can work for high school students, because they bring their knowledge of how they would rename a number.
So then what I hear you saying,
that,
just real quick. So what I hear you saying is you've created a bunch of tasks for number sense that can span K-12, and that really you're just changing the quantities of the number. And so literally on the planning side for a teacher, if you engage in partnering with us, you'll learn certain stations that could live K-12 in a system, and imagine the kind of coherence that you can get if kids are engaging in the same sort of task, but really the only thing that's really changing is the quantity of the numbers. Is that what I hear you saying?
Yes. And so what's really cool then is siblings could actually do some of these protocols together. So we included number talks and dot talks as other routines that can span the K-12. So it's really fun to do a number talk with your family or a dot talk with your family. We do them. My son, once he caught on to it, he was like, "Mom, can we do a number talk tonight?" And I'm like, "Sure." So yeah, super fun.
I guess.
I don't think my sons would want to do number talk with the family. I just have a sneaky suspicion.
They would.
Take them in,
They would. I got to tell you, if anyone would want to, they probably would. You just make them fun.
Okay, cool. So
after that, then they get the opportunity to do it, right? So there should be a blank slide. Well, okay, that's the directions again then the number that they're going to have. And then there's the blank, and I included the success criteria right there. So it's just for clarity. I mean, clarity wise is, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? And so I gave them 2 options. And then at the very end, we ask them to self-assess. And then there are reflection summaries for all of them. So this one, I included the essential questions. Not all tasks have essential questions, but sprinkled throughout the different tasks, we included essential questions that would support the understanding that the students should be learning. And then if you see the little reflection summary, that then takes you to a Google form, and so that students can be reflective. And so we go back to the very beginning of the empowered behaviors or empowered mathematician behaviors, and we ask them to identify which ones did they use, which ones are they feeling really confident in, which ones do they need some more help. So we're kind of like going full circle. So we started here, we're going to play around with them, and then we're going to have them come back.
And then you've really adapted this for the primary grades, right? Where they're still able to self-assess, but they might do it orally into Nearpod or Seesaw or other apps that like really support early literacy or early math, right?
Absolutely. And so at first they kind of look like there's a lot of word on the text, but what's so cool is all of the apps now are giving you the opportunity to record. So we're just going in and recording us reading the directions. We're obviously going to encourage the teachers to do that because the students need to hear their voice as they're doing it. Another key piece that I want to bring up in all of the menus, whether the content doesn't matter what the content is we're really including 3 models. So a teacher model, a video type of model of explaining it, kind of a think aloud kind of thing, and then also grabbing students who are explaining their work. So there are 3 different opportunities for clarity to come out. So you see the teacher's work, you hear it from the teacher, and then you hear from your peers. That kind of will really solidify the understanding because the parents will be able to see what it is. I was talking with a kindergarten teacher earlier this week, and she said the parents are really struggling with what it is a kindergartner should be able to produce. So she said we would get online and they'd be crying. You could tell they'd be crying. And then they would do a 20-minute read aloud summary. And she said, there's no way.
Yeah.
So providing clarity of what it actually looks like is going to be powerful.
And so we talked this morning, we had about 250 folks on our demo for Riverside County. And we were really talking about the balance between asynchronous tasks and like blended learning. And I think that what you and I, Lori, have been talking about too, how great are these, even when we get back to live instruction, like the asynchronous component, we can scaffold tasks for K1 kids because literally we can talk right to them. So do you want to talk a little bit about the power of asynchronous learning, especially with like, imagine like we're working with small groups and kids could still be using this technology when we're back face to face.
Yeah, what I found is teachers really struggle with what does it mean to have small group instruction in math and what could that look like? And then if they do kind of dabble into technology use, it's just mindless little games that look like old school skill and drill flashcard kind of thing. So what this is doing is it's opening our mind where we can have this continuous learning. Whether we're together in class or we're at home, we're going to have this seamless menu that's going to drive it. So I can say, okay, my small group today is going to be my my orange group, and everybody else, you're going to look at your menu and you're going to go here, and they could do it on their iPads, they could do it on their computers. Some of it might be hands-on. If we're in person, then I would make those tangible stations for them. And then when they go off, if we have to, for whatever reason, close down again, they already know the protocols, they understand it, so it's seamless. Snow days. I know we have several clients that are excited about this because it can replace, we don't have to call a snow day anymore, which is going to be remote learning today. Pick up where we left off. I mean, it's so cool.
Just a little information about our network, like every other small business nationally, we are struggling, and we did struggle, and we're really lucky though that we have all these great thought partners in terms of our consultants, because we've had the opportunity to collaborate together in ways that we've never gotten to do before because we're all at home, and a lot of us in the early days weren't even working. So I think that we've had the luxury to actually do some deep thinking work that a lot of our teachers just really haven't had the time to do. They got thrown into remote teaching and learning, where we've had really the benefit of meeting together almost every single day and putting our best thinking forward, and then we all blow holes in it and try to think of a different way to do it. But what we're really finding is that the asynchronous, a lot of the apps are so wonderful to support kids, whether it be face-to-face or remote. So just a quick review.
Cool.
Can you go over just briefly, just summarize again the key components of Clarity for Learning, like on that materials page? Like, what are the key things that, regardless of the subject, what are the things that we do to increase clarity for kids and parents?
Absolutely. So there are directions and or an overview of what is the task that they're going to do and why are they going to do it. So it kind of focuses us on what we're doing and why we're doing it. Every single task has success criteria, clear success criteria, plus an example, at least one example. We're trying to get 3 examples. So teacher modeling, and then the student sharing. Then there's the opportunity to dive into the task. And then at the very end is the reflection, which ties us back up to the success criteria. And students are kind of evaluating where they are and what they need to work on next.
Right. And that's really the key.
And there's choice. There's
choice.
There's choice in menus.
Yeah, so a lot of when we were launching this model, we didn't really feel good about coming out of the gate and trying to sell things when people are like just struggling beyond belief. And so we really, what we did during that time is we brought all of our consultants who are also parents, and we really wanted to find out from them as parents what were the key things that their kids were frustrated about. And so we really used the feedback from parents to design the model. And really, as we've gone to design it, we have brought it back to parents and get feedback. We're really lucky that we have a lot of New York teachers that are our pilot teachers. And then Lori and Isaac and me, we have networks of teachers all over the country. And they've been with us the whole way giving us feedback. So the model has been driven by teachers and parents' feedback. The next step is getting it in front of kids and getting some feedback from them.
Yeah.
Cool.
I'm super excited about that.
So Isaac, I mean, now that we're on here, you were doing some consulting this morning, and I know that a lot of this work from Clarity for Learning has seeped into that. What were some of the connections that you made? Because you've been grounded like us for the past 2 months. We've only been working together. So like, while we're on, like, what are some ahas that you had this morning when you were working with your teacher teams?
First off, it was great to be back with some teams that I've worked with so much in the past. But yeah, it was one thing we really have to offer, I think, because of the power of our network, is that clarity and kind of the faith that we know if we do this, this, then this, we have the clear directions, we have 3 models that any student on their own, or any really young student with a caregiver, or many of our special education students were able, they've been struggling, but they were saying, like, with this kind of support, they'll be able to be successful, or they've been successful because of these great shared reading lessons this teacher's doing and sharing. So it's really cool to see some of the great things they're doing and to be able to offer some kind of tricks and tips to simplify. But I think the more we all create together and share as a learning network, like you said, we'll be prepared not just to wrap up this year, but for whatever the future may hold.
Yeah. And I also think, like, the thing that I'm learning, it's the repetition, that if we create tasks that are repetitive in nature, then a lot of the teaching side of things, you know, we don't have to do so much on the front end. So I think what I really love about Lori's work and Isaac's work is everything that they have created, they've been thinking about that. They've been thinking about teacher labor. Wow, if I create this task, all I have to do is change some of the insides. And so it really reduces the teaching labor. I have another question for Lori. And by the way, everybody, they don't know what questions I'm asking them, because I don't even know, but they just kind of come to me. That's how it
works,
But like, I think like one thing, the early days, I think probably about 8 weeks ago, Lori and I were trying to figure out, if a school was really digging into inquiry already, what would be the model for achieving clarity versus a school that inquiry wasn't their focus? And I'm kind of more interested in the latter, because I think we have more schools than not that inquiry is not the way they do business. And so I'd like to talk about how do you achieve clarity with a more traditional classroom, although we still want inquiry to exist. Well, although they might not be full-blown inquiry, what would be the process of 3 that you've really thought about so inquiry still is a part of the learning?
Yeah. So if your students have not ever jumped in and are used to solving a problem before they've been taught how to solve it, then the easiest way to transition over into inquiry is by providing a worked sample. So let's say that we are, let's just go with high school and say it's the quadratic equation. Okay, so who really is going to discover the quadratic equation or the quadratic formula? Probably not our students, right? No,
not me.
But I wouldn't either. So, but what we could do is we could look at a worked sample and then say, what do you notice? What do you wonder? And so we're actually doing inquiry, but we're doing inquiry through a worked sample. And so that works at any grade level, any concept. What it forces students to do is, instead of saying nothing, I don't know anything, you actually push them to say, okay, well, I notice that it appears there's some multiplication in here. It also looks like there might be, and they start just kind of brainstorming or co-constructing success criteria.
Yeah.
There's a teacher at PS22 in Staten Island that she resisted me on inquiry and co-constructing, and she just finally gave up because I kept bothering her about it. And she gave a worked sample. And she said it was amazing because the students were able actually to connect their previous learning to the worked example, and it was an area model problem. And so they had enough where they could take an area model with base 10 blocks and make the connections and actually co-construct success criteria. So that's where it doesn't matter what you've done, it'll work.
So like, just for those that might not know what a worked sample or a worked example is, why don't you just give us a little bit more info on that? Because I'm sure there's a lot of people that have no idea what we're talking about.
Okay. So it would actually be like, if you think about a math textbook, there are always examples that are worked. We're actually going to pull it out. I like to say, put it in student handwriting. So you could say, this is someone's that I looked at, but you just give them a complete worked problem from the very top to the bottom and have them try to make sense of it. What do you notice and what do you wonder? So you notice certain things and then you have questions about other pieces of it. And so there is no teacher direction besides that. And so the students at first are sitting waiting for you to explain it to them.
Yeah,
but
I think another way to get a lot of
engagement,
right? I think another way to get a lot of engagement in math, once they've had some of those worked examples, is then you can go with like a non-perfect model, an imperfect model where there's mistakes and then kids can identify mistakes. There's a really good video on the teaching channel. I know you have to pay for it now, but it was a video on the teaching channel that you could get for free called Learning by Mistakes. And that's a really great video. Yeah, that's a really great video that looks at kids engaging around an imperfect model, right? So I think that we can build clarity through exemplars or worked examples, and we can also build clarity when kids have an imperfect model and a perfect model, and they have to compare them. And so I think that,
and you know what that is? That's math practice 3. That's math practice 3, critiquing the reasoning of others.
Yeah, there you go.
There you have it.
There you go. So I think that the whole idea here is that although this remote teaching and learning seems like really crazy and foreign, what we've really found is best practice is best practice. And so how do you do it in virtual teaching and learning? There's no way around it. You really have to get used to different sorts of apps and platforms. And I know that all of our learning curve has been, we have been on a learning curve unlike no other. Now, Lori is like this rare kind of person that probably spends 15 hours a day, I swear, on her things. But I would certainly say that she is an expert in Pear Deck, and so is Isaac. And I think that there's some apps that we've preferred over others. What are some of your guys' favorite, the favorite apps that you think provide the most access to kids, and why?
I love, especially when we're talking about our younger learners, Seesaw, and it works with anyone, but just because it's so simple on the interface, and because it's kind of like you can do your on-screen work, but paper pencil work is still so important. So they can do the paper pencil work, take a quick shot of it, and send it.
Right. Yeah, totally.
No getting lost in all the steps.
No getting lost. And that was one of the key things from our New York pilot is all of them said, and when we introduced this framework early on, for early grades, we need one click. So we took it to heart, and literally there's one click.
Yeah.
And everything they have to do, they click once, and then there's a home to get back. What's some other apps, Lori? What are some things that you've found the best for math?
I'm really liking Pear Deck, especially when I think about secondary teachers. They have paired up with Desmos. And so a lot of secondary teachers are familiar with Desmos. And so they have come together and created a partnership where it's a lot more streamlined. Whereas before you would have to keep going into Desmos and do your graph again and again and again. Now it actually flows through with you as you work problems. So it's really, I like it because it can go K-12. It's one of those apps where it makes sense for a district that you could do it. The one thing I'm hoping that they will add on is actual voice from the student.
Yeah.
So they could record themselves. But I think it'll be coming.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And Connie Hamilton, her favorite is Nearpod, which is very much like Pear Deck, but it already has the integrated voice piece into it, and you can also integrate it with Flipgrid. So I think there are things out there, but really how we work with you, for those of you that are hearing, is we hear about what are your problems of practice, and it's our job to help you figure out what are the best apps that you would use based on those problems. This morning we had about 50 special ed teachers, and it was a blind spot. I'll be completely honest. Like we had some things figured out, but not enough. But as soon as we got offline, we figured out at least 5 or 6 answers for those folks, and then we're reaching out to them to figure out, like, hey, here are the best ones. If you're visually impaired, if you're hearing impaired, what are the different apps that work best for all these different situations? Are there any other apps before we sign off? Because it is now 30 minutes, and we promised only 30-minute sessions.
Only 30 minutes.
And just for a minute, I'm going to pop up this awesome, and I'm going to uncover Paul's face.
That's all right. I don't mind being covered.
So this awesome
Cover me up, please.
resource from Lori. And I'm putting it in the comments as well, so you can link to it through our Bitly. And let me find it.
Yeah, so just really quickly, if you look at it, it says relationship between multiplication and division. I underlined that part because that's the part that you're going to change out. So whatever your content, like what is the focus of this chunk of learning, that would be there. But the first part's going to be the same because we're going to constantly be practicing our behaviors.
Cool.
Awesome. Yeah, so there's
those are just student-friendly learning targets for the math practices, correct? Or student-friendly success criteria aligned to the math practices. Whatever you call them, learning target success criteria. We have a nice example from Lori. And any other last questions? Isaac, can you see anything?
Nothing popping up right now, but we encourage anybody anytime to ask us questions, send thoughts, send feedback. And if you have a question or something you want us to talk about, let us know, and we'll address it.
And next week we have on Caravandis.
Actually, we had to flip it. We're going to have Star, and then Kara's going to to be next. Yeah.
Okay, so Star will be with us next week, and she is one of the contributing authors for Clarity for Learning. And then we have Kara the next week, and then we have something coming up this Thursday night, which is tomorrow night.
Yes, Michael McDowell leading us with rigorous PBL by design. So digging into problem-based learning and looking at how does this work, whether we are face-to-face, virtual, and how can you make it really work for you so it's genuine, it's engaging for parents, teachers, kids.
And the really cool thing about Michael is because they've been doing that work, I believe, in Australia for a while, they already had a virtual model worked out. So I'm really excited that he's going to be on. And then my birthday, my 50th
Yeah.
birthday, is Friday. But I'm going to be nowhere near a computer or a phone on my 50th. I
Happy
promise.
birthday
Thank you.
to
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. I had to get a little plug for myself.
Yeah.
So with that said,
Awesome.
we are done, and we will see you next week at 3 Eastern. Right, Isaac?
Perfect.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're going to freeze because he's going to unbroadcast us.
Bye.
It's going to be really
Bye. See you later.
uncomfortable for a minute.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, bye, everyone.